Hello and welcome to the Monday, November 1st, 2010 informational meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start off with our City Council staff report from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Thank you and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of notes today before we head on to our informational agenda. To let all of you know, as we're working toward our priorities for the 2011 legislature, Council leadership will be working with you to set up a working session to discuss those priorities of the Council so that we can then adopt that later this year in our working session. And then also to let you know, our Council photo, we just received that back. It's not hung yet, but you can see it on the side table with all of the information of the agendas for the evening. And they did a great job as always, so it's worth taking a note. And that should be posted online soon. In addition, in the multi-purpose room of the Carnegie Town Hall, you may have noticed there's two new pictures that were hung. These were painted years ago by former council member Bob Jameson's wife, Shirley Jameson, and so she dedicated those years ago to the city, and so we are thankful for the gift here at the Carnegie, and they are hung. And with a note on the back about who is the author. And they're just beautiful. Hope you could take a chance to take a look at those. That would be, yes, your mom. And then in addition, we are canceling, this is the beginning of November, and the last informational of November and December are canceled. That's something that we've done for years now, and just letting folks attend those family gatherings that are close to those dates. And just to remind you that informational meeting at the end of November and at the end of December have been canceled by Council leadership. And then lastly, to remind you to vote. If you have not voted, tomorrow's the day. Thank you. You can vote absentee up until 3 o'clock tomorrow at the County Administration Building or at your polling place between 7 and 7 tomorrow. Thank you.
Any questions of Deborah? Any questions on the legislative priorities, on how that works, what we need to do? If you do, just let us know. We'll get through that sometime soon. All right, we'll move on to Mayor Mike Huther. Hello, Mike. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Councilor Jameson, City Council, and people of Sioux Falls. Great day. We've got a number of presentations that will be coming up in the weeks to come. Today, of course, is Darren Smith and giving an update on the parking in downtown Sioux Falls. Next week, we'll have the Event Center update that we promised all of you. That'll happen on the second Monday of every month from this point forward. On November 15th, we want to give the City Council as well as all of you an update on the railroad relocation project. We've got railroad tracks that are in downtown Sioux Falls, and we'd like to relocate them to another part of the city for a variety of reasons. We'll give you an update on that on November 15th. And then, as Deborah mentioned, there's not an informational that last weekend in April, but November. We'd like to come back that first week in December and to give you an update on commercial development efforts in downtown Sioux Falls. That'll be Mike Cooper. He'll give that presentation, and I think you'll find it quite intriguing. Then also, we would like to do one on public transportation as well. We've been doing a lot of work trying to look at the different routes that we take, some of the issues that we have, some of the opportunities. We'd like to give you an update on that as well. Sioux Falls, want to let you know that major road construction season is almost over. It is. I'm very, very proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the city this summer. We do have some of those big ones almost done. We've got the 8th Street construction project, which will be done here in just a couple of weeks. The River Road project, just a monumental task for our city, is almost done. Really pleased about that. Those Minnesota road improvements that Councilor Jameson touched on a couple of weeks ago, we've got a beautiful road, but we still have some manhole covers that are lower than what they need to be. The contractor that we hired is fixing those for us, and so we're excited about that. And then, of course, we are doing one last push to repair as many potholes or bumps in the road that we have, and that's going well. And I'll tell you, if the weather stays good, we'll just keep doing it. But we do know that winter's going to come one of these days, and when it does, we'll be ready for snow removal. I would ask the City Council and all of you in Sioux Falls, I know that at one point in time in our budget presentations or when we talked about the roads in town, the City Council wanted to get together and maybe try to prioritize some of those important road projects that we have in town. You know, Councilor Jamieson on the west side touched on there are some intersections that really cause a lot of grief and backup. I'll tell you, City Council, if you want to put those together and maybe put even your own priorities down, you know your constituency, you know what they're concerned about. We'd be happy to use those as we look in 2011 and 12. And to all of you in Sioux Falls, I'd urge you to do the same. If there's a road out there that's just in dire need of repair, and you believe that we need to know about it, just let the Public Works Department know or the Mayor's office know, and we'll certainly look at that. Wanted to just touch briefly on something that I'm incredibly proud of. We have 1,100 city employees. As you folks know, well, we had one of the highest participation rates in the United Way that we've ever had in this city. We had a 70% participation rate this year, and compared to the 60% that we had last year. We had 771 employees of city government that chose to give to the United Way. What a great success story. It's over 110 more than what we had last year. We have 78 Heart Club members versus the 69 last year. And then the drum roll that I'm incredibly proud of is that we almost raised $100,000 to support those needy organizations in town. And I think it's just a great testament that not only do city employees give their time and their talent, but they also give their treasure. They love the city, as do all of you city council members. Changing topics a little bit, the River Greenway project. I know that winter's coming, but we are going to begin to do some more work on that River Greenway project, and Don Carney is going to give you an update on that here in the days or weeks to come. And it's very, very exciting. It's one of those downtown development efforts that was really debated and discussed way before I became mayor. It was the city council and the leaders of the community that wanted to create something really vibrant for downtown, and that project is going to happen. And I'll make sure that Don Carney gives you an update on that. And then, last but not least, I've been on this job 6 months. It's gone by so fast, especially for the new city councilors. I know you probably feel the same, but I just want to speak on behalf of Cindy, Kiley, and myself. I just want to thank you all. The way that you've treated Cindy, Kiley, and I on this journey has been overwhelmingly wonderful. And not only the Sioux Falls people, but South Dakota people, you've been very, very kind. And I'll tell you, it makes the job easier. It does. It makes it easier to get up and go tackle the issues and opportunities that our city faces. And so on behalf of my family, I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure the City Council feels the same way. So, Councilor Jamieson, thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor? Councilor Litz.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, you did invite this council to step forward with some ideas on street maintenance and street repair, and that's always a good thing, but I would just urge some patience if you do have a project, because there's a sequence of events and there may be things under the ground that go into that, and some of it takes some design work and investigation before you can just plow over it. So in the interest of not throwing good money over bad, if you do have an idea, and I've brought a lot of them down here in my 5 years, and I had to wait my turn, but developing some patience in those ideas for road repair is always a good thing. Thank you.
Any other questions for the mayor? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to our staff reports. Start with the audit committee. We don't have a report, but we do have an upcoming meeting we're trying to schedule. But if you remember, we were looking for 2 additional members of the council to join the audit committee, and we've found those 2. Sue Aguilar has stepped up, and so has Rex Rolfing. And if I don't see any objection by the rest of the group, we'll appoint those 2 to the audit committee if that's okay. I don't see any strong objections, so welcome, Sue and Rex. Thank you for joining the audit committee. And we'll get with you on scheduling the next meeting. So move on to the Fiscal Committee.
We are meeting immediately following this, and the agenda is on the back of your informational agenda. We have 4 items to consider: entertainment tax ordinance revision, budget analyst job description, balanced budget resolution, and the budget transfer ordinance. We will start at the top and get through those. Some of those we've discussed. The first 2 items are items that we haven't spent a lot of time on yet.
Any questions of Councilor Brown? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did meet last week, and the subject matter was a trailer court up in Norton Acres that has been the source of aggravation for some of the neighbors for quite some time, but I believe that planning and zoning has taken appropriate action. We're moving forward with that, and it was my perception after the update that we're moving in the right direction with that. I don't know if any of the other councilors would care to comment on that. Mr. Alford?
Yes, I would. I got a call today from Mr. Sinclair, who lives next door to that, who approached me with a phone call originally and wanted to thank everyone, city employees and us, for the good job that we've done. We've taken, he said, my vote counted. That was his direct words. And he said, thank you very much for everything that everybody's done to jump on top of that and get it under control. So thank you all very much.
Any other questions for Land Use? Councilor Litz, anybody? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to a Public Services Committee. Councilor Anderson?
No update. Sorry. Didn't get
Red light is on. Red light is on. Any questions of Public Services? Okay. All right, thank you. We'll move on to City Council open discussion. Any items? Councilor Litz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple items that I want to talk about. The other week I went down to where the old Schoeneman's property was, and Rex and I were there for sure. And I think Jim showed up, but they had a ribbon cutting for the new thing that's going to go in down there. Josh, I'm drawing a blank here, but we all know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of land back there, and it was quite a development to get on that east side. But one thing that I have noticed in the last month was when I come over the bridge from the east heading towards downtown, is the glaring thing that is there right now is that big white structure that sticks out over the river. And I see that we have an update, overview of the parking system, which is rather timely, and I'm glad that you guys are coming forward with that because I'm sure there's a lot of questions on that. And to be honest with you, I haven't been on that thing since Steve Ellis and the Starfires had a ramp dance down there, and I think that was probably 1960, I don't know what. It was a while ago, yeah, let's just leave it at that. But I took it upon myself to go in and see the facility. And quite frankly, folks, it was appropriate to be on there close to Halloween because there are chunks of concrete that are wire meshed up there with screws in it. There's cracks in it. I'm not an engineer, but to me, I think perhaps this thing, it's going to need quite a bit of money to maintain that, to move that thing ahead, or else perhaps, today we would not be allowed to build that over the river. And, in the interest of, we're going to be putting a lot of money into the greenway down there, and so in the interest of moving the city ahead downtown, I think we've got to take a serious look at how much revenue that produces. I know the bond is paid off, but we have to take a serious look at whether that structure is going to remain or we're going to bury a lot of money into it to maintain it for another 15 or 20 years. I don't know. Maybe our parking staff here is going to update us on that. Another thing that I did this weekend, and I'm going to sound like Dee Knutson, is I saw the mayor out there was this paint the plows thing. And, of course, I maybe had a little self-interest going out there, but it's a deal where they take the trucks with the plows and they take them to the schools, and the kids paint designs on them, and it was pretty cool. And I tried to imagine if I was a little kid and this big plow, I mean, it's probably 4 foot to the top of that blade, and they painted some designs on it. If I was a little kid standing in front of that thing painting on it, I would be a little bit held in awe. And I think what this does, besides giving the schools some involvement with the city, is it introduces some very young taxpayers to the idea of what's happening to your money. And, most of the time when kids they're in school or they're sleeping when we're cleaning the streets. And so it gave those kids and their parents an idea of where some of their tax dollars have been. And it's a pretty awesome fleet we have down there. As a matter of fact, most people drive by it on Cliff Avenue, don't give it a second look. But it's an amazing fleet we have down there. It's an amazing collection of equipment. And I think it's going to grow every year. I don't know how many people we had down there, but I went down there and had some fun. And I think it's one of those things. It's going to be like the mayor's picnic down to the falls. It'll get some momentum as we go along. So I'd like to compliment the city and whoever thought that up. It's a pretty good idea. It's a fun idea, and it's an involvement idea. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments, open discussion items? I've got a couple items. I know you've all been anticipating this RV ordinance that I've been working on, and I've been doing a little research, and one of the things I found out I just thought I'd share with you because it was enlightening to me is that if you have a motorized RV longer than 22 feet, you cannot bring that to your house. You cannot even park it to get in it. You can't unload it. Maybe you could drive by slow and kids could run and jump on. But my intent and hope in the end is to find a compromise of some sort so that the citizens of Sioux Falls can enjoy an RV, utilize an RV at their residence. I'm not sure what that compromise will be, but I just thought it was enlightening that you cannot even park there for a moment to load or unload anybody. So hopefully we can all find a compromise and work together and move that forward. The other item is the signage allowed on vehicles before they're determined to be commercial vehicles. I got a call over the weekend about a guy who works for one of the utility companies in town. And the signage that they have on their vehicle is part of a emergency response vehicle. In an emergency, they drive them home, and everybody's on call. A certain number of vehicles are on call, and they were all notified that they were violating the ordinance by driving these vehicles home because of the signage. And we need to find a line of some sort where we can allow those people to be at least in a reasonable striking distance in the response of an emergency versus having them park their vehicles off at another facility site, just causing more time. But something to consider, and I think Councilor Entenmann was working on this as well, but just two other items that will be coming forward just as soon as I can kind of get things together. But I just thought you should know maybe of why it's relevant, what defines a commercial vehicle within our city, and maybe we need to work on those details to find another compromise that works. I don't know if anybody else has any comments or thoughts. Councilor Entenmann.
Yes, Councilor Jameson, I know they are working on the sign ordinance, broad-based, but it's going to take some time. But Deborah, I know, had done some preliminary work and some questions asked too, and I agree with you. Hopefully in the short term that we can make some corrections to this, so count me in. I'll work with you on it too.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move into our presentations. Okay, seeing none, we'll start with an update on Leaders Park, a single-track project from Dave Fisher. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Good afternoon, City Councilors, Mayor, Dave Fisher, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. I wanted to take a few minutes this afternoon just to update you on a project that we've been working with the Falls Area Single Track Incorporated on, as well as the Leaders Park neighborhood, since about May of 2009. Which is when FAST brought to us a plan to construct a single-track facility within Leaders Park. Just as a reminder, Leaders Park is located at 6th Street and Leedale Avenue, right close to I-229. Up on the screen is the concept of the improvements, and as you can see, it involves about 3 different trail loops of varying degrees of difficulty. And the total trail length is approximately 2.5 miles. The width of these trails is about between 6 and 24 inches wide. We've had 2 neighborhood meetings with the Leaders Park neighborhood, one in December of 2009 and another in February of 2010. They were well attended. There was some good discussion that happened at those meetings. And it helped shape what the final concept of the plan was going to be. Ultimately, the project was approved by the Park Board in October of this year, or excuse me, in July of this year. And with that, the current status of the project is that there's been a 5-year usage agreement that's been drafted. It's been reviewed by the neighborhood representatives and by representatives from FAST. and it was approved by the Park Board in October. The trail route has been reviewed as recently as this afternoon. We met neighborhood representatives, representatives from FAST, and also park staff, and walked the entire trail route to get input from the neighborhood. They did have some suggestions, and FAST was quick to take them up on those suggestions and implement them as a part of the final route. Might also mention that this single track is something that we don't have currently in the park system, and it'll be the first one of its kind. Not only will it be for bicycling, but as the neighborhood representatives were also kind of picking up on today as we walked it, it's going to be a great place for the neighbors to be able to walk and enjoy that area without the obstructions of the weeds and the branches and that kind of thing. So the meeting went very well. I think we're off to a real good start, and FAST is now ready to start construction in earnest on the trail. Construction will probably take through the summer of 2011 with the idea that it would be ready for use probably late summer or early fall of next year. And with that, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions, and I'd also point out that Chris Pearson is here from the FAST organization if you have any questions specific for him.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Hey, Dave, I did go to some of those meetings, and some of the big concerns early on were parking for bicyclists. How did we end up with that?
The way we started out with it was that we had volunteered to go ahead and stripe the space on the road that was adjacent to the park so that parallel parking could take place, with the idea that that would help organize the parking more so that we could fit the maximum number of vehicles in there. When it came down to it with the neighborhood, they asked us not to do that and really hold off on any kind of parking improvements at this point in time. If that becomes an issue, we did put together a couple of potential plans for parking that might be on site if it gets to that point. But again, at this point, I think the usage is expected that most of the users will be bicycling to the area, and so it's not expected to be a problem, but we do have some alternatives we've identified in the event that we do.
Then is this, the picture that we're looking at, is it the master plan for that park, or is it just the trail plan?
It's the trail plan.
Okay.
It's basically to give it was to give the neighborhood an idea of the concept of where this trail would go. Some of their concerns were, what am I going to see from my house? The trail has been strategically located so that from an elevation standpoint, you basically can't see it. And as I said, the meeting today it went real well, and I think we're off to a good start on getting this going.
Well, you know, that's great to hear, because I was at that first meeting where things didn't necessarily go very well, and so I appreciate you guys hanging with it, and Chris, too. You guys have done a great job with keeping with that neighborhood and really listening to them. I think that's important. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Dave, I remember I was around when this project first kind of was brought forward, and I was real excited about it, and I wish I had some knees left, because I'd probably be down there riding it. I'm certain I've got an old helmet hanging around here someplace, but you know, the parking thing, Michelle, you know, you nailed that, and the reason I know about that is because for years this has been an informal park for sledding down the hill. I'm sure you know that, and I'd like to report somebody stole my 1965 Thunderbird hood that I used to slide down the hill on. It's no longer there, but if you can find that. But that's my question is, you know, it's an informal thing, everybody sliding down that hill. Is this going to be impeded or stopped because of this track being put down there?
We discussed that today when we were looking at the trail route with the neighborhood, and they were also saying what's going to happen, because kids still do use it on an informal basis. And so their question was, is there going to be activity on the trail? Well, I think initially at least, the idea is that it's probably going to have more winter use as a hiking trail, snowshoeing trail, something like that. And so it probably won't be a case where there will be bicycles darting out in front of kids going down the hill. The other thing that we talked about is, as at the trailhead, there's going to be like an information sign that'll have some courtesy rules on it that will also have rules that will address just what we're talking about. We talked about two things, of the bike riders or trail users being cognizant of the use of the hill also as a sledding hill, and also bike riders giving way or yielding to hikers. And so those are some of the kinds of things we're going to put on the information sign at the trailhead and try to deal with that.
Thanks. I didn't see a whole lot of problem with the overlap, but I'm glad you mentioned those things. I didn't think about it. But I noticed at the bottom of the sledding hill, there is a part where the track goes over, and I didn't know if it was going to be elevated, or anything like that. I mean, obviously, if you're moving pretty good when you get to the bottom of there, a little hill could, it could get you up in the air pretty good. So I didn't.
Yeah, we had talked about the possibility, too, of actually being able to put stop signs for the trail traffic right where you come out of the woods, kind of onto the sledding surface, similar to what we do on the bike trail at the 57th Street entrance to Yankton Trails Park, where it crosses right there. And we just stop the bike trail traffic is what we do. So,
Very good. Thanks.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yeah, Dave, how wide did you say this was?
Anywhere between 6 and 24 inches wide. It's just meant to basically, there's no kind of a surfacing. It's just using the native material.
Okay, so no composition, it's just...
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong.
So you kind of go in there and level it off a little bit, is what it amounts to.
Yep. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dave? All right, Dave, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next presentation of the overview of public parking system in downtown area with Matthew Nelson and Darren Smith. Welcome, Darren.
Good afternoon. Darren Smith, Director of Community Development and Public Parking. And as Councilor Jamieson said, with me is Matt Nelson, our Public Parking Facilities Manager. We felt it would be timely to provide an overview of our public parking system for a number of reasons. One, we recognize that we have 4 new city council members and a new mayor, so we don't want to make assumptions about what those new members know or don't know about the system. And I would also say the same for our veteran council members. We don't want to make any assumptions about, again, the full understanding that you have of the system. So we do want to provide a brief overview and attempt to answer any questions that we can. So jumping right in here, pretty straightforward. Our mission statement, the mission of public parking facilities is to provide sufficient, convenient, safe, and attractive parking for the employees and customers of the downtown area. Next slide is we want to jump right in here to capacity. What's the system look like? Total on-street parking, we have a little over 1,100 spaces. These, of course, would largely be the metered spaces downtown. Then next, we'll look at total off-street parking. And, of course, this would be our surface lots. We have just under 1,000 spaces in our 15 surface lots, and those are in green on the map. And in our ramps, we have just a little over 2,000 spaces in our 5 public parking ramp facilities downtown. And, again, those are in red. And you can see how both the ramps and the lots, I think, are strategically placed throughout downtown. So this gives us a total available parking, or capacity really, in the public parking system of 4,102 spaces. We are an enterprise fund, and as I think all of you know, that means we get no tax dollar contributions or direct tax dollar support for the public parking system, and we are one of a small number of enterprise funds within city government in Sioux Falls. We currently are debt-free due to an early bond payoff in 2009. So basically the message implied there is that we are in very good financial shape with our public parking system. In an effort to break down revenues here, again, kind of keeping it simple, breaking it down into 3 different ways. 100% of our revenue really is generated from lease agreements with our ramps, surface lots, fines such as the overtime parking tickets and other tickets, and then our parking meters. So you can see 70% or about $1.65 million, comes from leasing the ramps and lots, those 3,000 spaces, give or take, that we just touched on. A little over $400,000 in revenue is generated from fines, again, those parking tickets. And finally, just under $300,000 is generated from those meters that everyone loves. Moving forward here, public parking benefits, competitive lease rates. Our lease rates begin at $32 in one of our surface lots, some of our surface lots, I should say, $3 daily, and 60 cents an hour. So you can lease space in a number of different ways. Monthly leases, daily, or even hourly, and of course, the meters. Some comparable cities here, Minneapolis, Fargo, and Omaha, and then Sioux City after that. I think it's interesting, and you need to know that recently we did reach out to the public parking departments in each of these cities to make sure that we're being competitive with our lease rates, but also find out if there's any new ideas out there that they're engaged in that we would be interested in or could be beneficial here. And long story short, what we found is that Minneapolis, as you would imagine, is significantly higher priced than our system, but Fargo and Omaha are very, very comparable. I would say almost identical in terms of what we're charging here, and they seem to have viable systems at the same time. Sioux City, on the other hand, is somewhat significantly lower in terms of their lease rates, but I would also say that they do not have what I would consider to be a model system or a system that we would want to emulate. They are subsidized by their city council. That's a choice they've made to keep their lease rates as low as possible for economic development and other purposes. However, unlike us and some of these other cities, they do not have much in the way of a maintenance fund to maintain their ramps in the way that they should, and they have virtually no dollars available for future facilities, new ramps going forward. Most of their ramps are rather old. They do have one newer ramp, but that was paid largely with federal dollars as it's a bus stop parking ramp combo. We do have a very efficient utilization of our parking. The 2007 Walker study, which we're going to touch on in a little bit, told us that. And again, of course, just an FYI here for the council, but also the public, we lease our spaces in the ramps and lots from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which means they're open to the public and free Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then on holidays and weekends. Okay, jumping into where we're at with our budget year to date. You can see a couple of the bar graphs here, where we're at with expenditures as well as revenues compared to where we thought we would be with the budget. Little behind in both revenues and expenditures, but the most important thing is off to the right, revenues versus expenditures, and you can see we're in very good shape. Revenues are exceeding expenditures, and we would anticipate at the end of the year we will end up with about, with revenue exceeding expenditures at about $450,000. What do we do with that $450,000? You'll see the two bullet points below there. We use this money essentially to fund our CIP. Again, going back to my earlier statement, we don't receive sales tax dollars for CIP projects like most other departments. We are totally self-supported. So we use the dollars we come out ahead each year to fund our CIP and also to establish a reserve fund, a nest egg, if you will, for a couple reasons. One, to pay for emergency type repairs, those types of significant several $100,000 or even potentially multi-million-dollar repairs that we hope never come up, but we know could. It's part of it. And also saving as we look ahead to the need for what we know will be a new parking ramp at some point in the future. It's certainly something that we hope we have a need for. Our current reserve levels are at approximately $2.25 million. Okay, next we're going to give you an idea of, again, just kind of historically, where have lease rates been in terms of how much of our system is utilized on a regular basis. You can see we peaked about 10 years ago over 100% of our system was leased. That was in 2000, 2001, and then we built a new ramp. That was the 8th and Dakota ramp. And then you can see things kind of leveled off a little bit. Then the last couple years, they have started to go down. Very simply, that's a product of the current economy we're in. We lost a major business downtown when Midland left downtown. And outside of Midland, it's been more of a slow bleed, I guess is how I would characterize that, the last 18 months or so in terms of a few small businesses here and there leaving. However, we're starting to see signs of that turning around, so we're enthusiastic and optimistic about that. You're all familiar with Avera's recent announcement, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. Currently where we're at is about 74%, 75% of our system is utilized. When we factor in Avera, it'll be closer to 80%. Optimally, we'd like to be between 85 and 95%. And you probably say, well, why wouldn't you want to be 100% or 105% like we were 10 years ago? Well, we want to leave a little room for those who use the system on a non-monthly basis, a daily basis, evenings, those types of things. And again, when Avera is added here, we'll jump up to about 80%. Okay, the next slide. Again, this gives you an idea of telling you where our utilization is. So in black, you see lease rates at 90% or above. And if you look right in the middle of that, those blacked out facilities, that would be the river ramp, be our Skelly's lot, and then the Block 11 ramp, which is just north and east of the Carnegie here. And those, of course, again, are right in the core, and it's really a supply and demand thing, and that's where we see the highest demand. And then as you go down, the yellow would be lease rates between 70 and 90%, is still, relatively strong. Green would be those lease rates below 70%. 8th and Dakota, the 8th and Dakota ramp has the lowest lease rate, and frankly, it has, I think, for almost the entirety of its life. It was up to, I think, near 100% a few years ago, but then when Verasun and some others left, it really emptied the 8th and Dakota lot. Right in the middle, just south of the Skelly's lot, there in the middle, the one that's blacked out just south of the river ramp, you see our First Avenue ramp. That is in green. And then the surface lot just to the east of that, next to the river on the far right side, those two areas, those two facilities is where most of the Avera, well, actually all of the Avera folks will go in one of those two. So we would expect those colors to change. The surface lot is a small lot. It'll probably go black. First Avenue will probably jump to yellow, so we'll get above 70% in there. Some relevant recent information. Again, that Walker report we touched on earlier, it was finalized in 2007. It does provide relevant and helpful information, but information that should be taken with a grain of salt and scrutinized as we move forward. It was a snapshot in time, again, valuable, but gave us an assessment of what things look like in 2007, which frankly is very different, a very different time than where we're at now. The economy is very different. We were closer to 100% of our system being leased. We're closer to 75% currently, but we're on the upswing. So good information, but times have changed a little. Just a little tidbit here. Public parking owned off-street parking, so again, those ramps and surface lots, account for approximately 26% or 1/4 of all the parking supply downtown, and that includes the on-street. The reason that's important is just to make you understand that a lot of times when we think of downtown parking, we think of the public parking system. The truth is, the reality is that our public parking system, those ramps and lots, are only about 1/4 of all the parking that we have in downtown. The Walker report recommended increasing rates to complete planned capital improvements in downtown. Rates were increased by $5 in 2008, $5 again in 2009, and prior to that, the last increase was in 2004. A few other items here, relevant future considerations. Again, the Avera Health announcement we touched on, 200-plus leases. That could grow. A couple other things you need to know about going forward. CNA Surety is relocating in spring of 2012, as was talked about earlier. They are in the Block 11 ramp, and they pretty much fill the Block 11 ramp, 450 leases. So they are vacating the Block 11 ramp when they move into their new building. So we will have an empty ramp potentially there. Now, again, things can change quickly. The owners of that building know they have a year and a half to try and fill it, to bring somebody in after CNA leaves. They could fill that building, they could fill half of it, or it could set for a year and a half, or a significant period like the Midland building did. We don't know. Certainly we'll work hard with the owners and others to try and see that building filled, and it helps the parking system. River ramp removal. Councilor Litz touched on this earlier. It will be celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2012. And I made a note here, maybe we can get the Steve Ellis Band back for an anniversary celebration, if they're still around. It's been a few years. The typical life expectancy of a ramp would be 40 to 50 years. And as Councilor Litz stated, the Walker report told us something I know that we knew a few years before, which is we've been told that we really need to invest probably around $700,000 to $800,000 in that ramp to keep it viable long term, if we have that in our long term plans. When the river ramp comes down, you notice we put to be determined out there. I don't think it's if, it's when, and that'll make a lot of people happy. We will lose 500 spaces in the system, most of them in the ramp and a small number in the surface lot that's adjacent to the east of the ramp. And it is nearly 100% filled now. So it's a cash cow. We hate to see it go for that reason, but it does need to go for other development. And there is, I think it's fair to say there's strong interest in that area to make it something else, and we're excited about that. So we look forward to making that happen. Matt is going to touch in just a moment. Matt is going to touch on what will we do with those folks when it's time for that ramp to come down. And I'll be honest with you, that's something that could, it could be something that we're coming back here to talk about with you very soon, in the next several months. It could be a year and a half development that's maybe timed with the CNA building opening. But we have to know what we're going to do with those 500 individuals, give or take. So Matt's going to walk through that in just a moment. But I did just want to, the last bullet point on here, after all the moving around that we touched on here on this page, we would still expect our total system lease rate to be at about 78%. But again, that's what it looks like today and with these changes, and that's a moving target. It just depends. Somebody fills a CNA ramp or Block 11 ramp, that CNA building, we're over 90% right there. So it's a real moving target. I'm going to have Matt come up and touch on this real quick if we can.
The question has come up several times about where do you put everybody, because 500 people is a lot of people to move. And these two maps are kind of a snapshot of if we took a bulldozer down there today and pushed it over, where we would put those people. There's a lot of different, I could have gone through 10 maps and we could spend all day doing this, but this is really to show that we could do it today if we needed to. On your left-hand side, all of the businesses shown in red, those are all the major tenants that lease out of the river ramp now, and you can see their proximity to it. If there's two lines connecting it, it shows it would be a skywalk or a walkway where it's directly connected to the ramp. So we're looking at roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings or businesses that are going to be directly affected there. On the right-hand side kind of shows where we would plan on moving them. There are some small numbers. I know they're a little difficult to read to show where they would go. The Cedar American Railroad, we would move over to 8th and Dakota. That is the furthest north business. They have leased out of that ramp previously, and we know at some point that business will be actually relocating or shutting down. So, but they are there today. Just south of that, Great Western Bank, and then there is a law firm in there also. We would plan on moving them, the First National Bank, Merrill Lynch, and I. Bailey over to the D1 ramp, which is the First Avenue ramp. They would all fit there. And CNA is the only business where it gets a little cloudy there. There would be some walks there that looked like they'd be in the 2.5 block range, a little further than they obviously were before, but they would go to multiple lots, and we'd plan on that hopefully being temporary, as we know they would relocate in 2012.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, last couple slides here. Just a few more future considerations, things upcoming. As we talked about, I know during the budget process, just touched on, we will be piloting credit card and debit card parking meters downtown, probably next summer. I know here it says spring 2011. We'll probably be looking at the 4 busiest months of the year, maybe May, June, July, and August, for example. We'll be selecting a very busy stretch on Phillips Avenue. At least that's what we're thinking now, and we're gonna try these and see how they go over, see how the public responds. If it's something they like and doesn't have an adverse impact on our system, then we will look at expanding that possibly. Another item, I think it's important, annual parking ramp inspection policy. This is something we currently do not have in place now, and I think is very important for us to have in place. So we have been talking with the industry professionals and settled on something that they recommend and we like, which is each of our 5 ramps will be inspected by ramp professionals annually. But on an annual basis, it would be a walkthrough, more of it'd be a less formal inspection. But every 3 years, each of our ramps would get a thorough inspection, which would be much more in-depth. So when we're looking at the river ramp and some of our other ramps as they age, we can feel good about telling our citizens and those who use the ramps downtown that we're doing everything they can to make sure they're safe and taking preventive measures rather than waiting till we have big problems that we discover. And again, those several $100,000 or even multi-million-dollar fixes, if we can head those off in a preventive way. So we'll be looking at starting those in 2011 as well. And finally, future expansion, as I know you're all aware with approving the recent CIP. In 2014, we do have a CIP item for a $14 million ramp project. That is really a placeholder number. It's a placeholder year for that matter. I think as we probably demonstrated here, it's a little bit of a snapshot, and we have to try and determine when demand will be strong enough to make this investment. And we have to stay ahead of that curve a little bit, but at the same time be responsible with our system dollars. Construction costs, just as an FYI, good industry rule of thumb here is about $15,000 per space. But again, that's rule of thumb. We're told that today, if we built it today, it could be as low as $10,000 per space because of the economy and where demand is and so forth. But again, hopefully we won't be in this economy for very long, and so a good rule of thumb, a conservative number should be closer to $15,000 per space. And then the final slide is to show you our rate map. So you can combine where our ramps and surface lots are, and then corresponding with that on the left are the rates. So you can see how much we're charging and where. And again, what you'll find is in the core of downtown, especially where those ramps and lots were blacked out, those are going to be the higher rates because of strong demand and waiting lists. And then as you get away from the core, you'll see those rates go down to $32 a month surface lot spaces and so forth. And with that, we are finished, and I would welcome any questions.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Darren, thanks for that report. It's interesting. I think about that ramp, and you said bulldozing it in. I'm not sure we can do that, but at any rate, you'll figure that out if we have to dismantle it or if we can drop part of it in the river. I'm not sure about environmental concerns, but at any rate, don't let the zip feed guys do it for you. The other thing is the 15K, that's down from 18K, 18,000 per space that we estimated for the Event Center task force here just not all that long ago. So that's good news. If you get it for 10K, that's even better news. The other thing is, I'm not sure if you misspoke or my memory is bad, which the latter is probably true, but, you said $700,000 to $800,000 for repairing the ramp, and I thought the Walker report said $7 to $8 million over the next 15 years, but I may be wrong on that. I'm not certain.
The last report that we have from them is roughly $855,000 in long-term, in the repairs that they recommended. We just dropped $55,000 in it last year. We're looking at dropping 50 to 60 next spring in it, just to keep it structurally sound and safe. They walked through it this fall, and the findings were that the ramp looks worse than it is. He said, it looks really bad, but it's not terrible, but you do need some money into it. We've estimated it at around $1 million. It tops. So I'm thinking
That million or under is just for immediate concerns. We're not talking about ongoing if we kept it for... Very good. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Brown?
Thanks, Darren. Good, thorough report. Just one question. Are you comfortable with the reserves there to take care of the maintenance of the other ones? Because I recall one conversation where there was some concern about not having enough in the bank to really do the repairs necessary to maintain them.
I am, and I know I had a long conversation not only with Matt, but also with some of the members of our parking board, because they did make a decision just last year to use some of those reserve funds to pay off our debt, and they really felt like that's something the system could afford, and it was in the system's best interest to save that interest money, instead of continuing to pay interest on what we had borrowed. And I am, knowing, getting more familiar the last few months with what types of expenses we would have, not only with those CIP-type projects, but emergency-type situations. I'm comfortable with where we're at. I wouldn't rule out coming and asking for money if we need it.
Oh, sure, you stick that in at the end.
But I'm comfortable where we are now.
Thank you.
Councilor Erpenbach?
A couple of things, Darren, and thanks for the report, too. I know earlier that report, the PowerPoint was not available on Granicus. Is it now, or will it be?
Yes.
Denise is giving me a nod.
Yes.
Okay. That'll be appreciated because it's unreadable at this point. I appreciate that. Then the other thing I wanted to ask about is, do we have other opportunities for parking, in the downtown area? I mean, we've talked certainly about our own public parking. Are there other opportunities? Have we seen anything on the horizon in terms of private-sponsored parking ramps, anything like that? Is there anything going on like that?
One of the things that I failed to touch on, Matt, could you bring up that slide where we look at Wells Fargo and the Skelly's lot? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I forgot to touch on when I spoke about that CIP project and where a future ramp could go, that Walker study indicated the two best or most viable locations would be what is currently the Wells Fargo ramp, or currently the Wells Fargo ramp site, and also the Skelly's, or what I refer to as the Skelly's lot. It's a First Avenue surface lot. Of course, the difference there is Wells Fargo owns the Wells Fargo ramp, and we own the First Avenue surface lot. Both of them would make very good locations for that. I think it is a possibility we could look at. Some other cities have looked at private-public partnerships. Some have even gone with retail space on the first floor with maybe below-ground and above-ground, above the retail space parking. It seems to be met with mixed reviews in some of those cities, so it's something we'd want to look at very carefully. But I think that's, in terms of future expansion, that's probably what we're looking at.
Well, those locations seem to be the most logical, and I know that's what the report said.
Yeah.
And I guess that I would encourage us then as a city to continue to look at those sites and to keep those in mind as we discuss some of the issues that are going on in the city. The other thing I'd say to you is that I know you have some powerhouse people on that parking board, and I just encourage you to let them be as good as they can be in service to the city. They've been doing some awesome work for us, so thanks for your report.
Thank you. And I did want to point out that Grant Howman from our Public Parking Advisory Board is here. I don't think I've missed other members. Grant's right here in the front.
Councilor Litz?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Darren, I'm sure if we do get around, and when we do get around to building a new parking ramp, one thing that it always concerns me downtown is that there is one particular ramp that is not stackable. We can't build on top of it. And, I'm sure that in the bid, it'll turn up as an alternative, but I would encourage the city to look at putting the extra money into a foundation. So in the future, you can stack onto these ramps. And I'm not talking about one or two more layers. I'm talking about going up bigger than that. So.
That's a great point, and I think it's a lesson we've also learned in recent years with the downtown library. And then when we, looked at expansion there, I know that was a discussion point: is could we go up? It's certainly something that's on the forefront of our minds as we look at that. It will be, and I should, if I can, should have said this at the very beginning. Another reason I think it's important to give this overview at this time is. When we're talking to, we're working on those economic development efforts, especially in downtown. We're talking to businesses, whether they're right here in town, looking at downtown, or from another state. The first question we get every time is parking. Availability, cost, where's it located? So it is, I would say, certainly an important factor in what we want to do in the future with economic development downtown, and maybe go as far as to say it's the key factor going forward.
Mayor Huther.
Thank you, Councilor Jameson. Matt, could you go back to the vacancy slide? And Matt or Darren, if you could just put some real numbers to the vacancy slide. We've got the total availability, the total public parking spots. Again, just to simplify this again for the good people of Sioux Falls. We've got the total available of 4102.
Yep.
Those are all the parking spaces that we have that we can figure out for downtown Sioux Falls.
Correct.
Okay. Then you look at do you have a number in terms of what the estimated capacity is today for parking? We have people that come in to work, come in to shop, come in to dine. What is the capacity today? What is the vacancy? What is the number of open spots today?
Well, in the public parking system, again, we're at about 75%, so about 3,000 of our 4,000 public parking spaces are leased on a regular basis, Monday through Friday, 6 to 6. So that would leave approximately 1,000 currently. Now, keep in mind, that is spread throughout the system. And again, you can see the different colors on one of the other slides on where those are at. But that would be, anywhere from maybe 100 or 200 available here to several dozen at a different location, spread throughout downtown. That also includes the meters, which, again, at any point in time, Phillips and the other streets can be filled, and at other times they're more empty. But right now, about 3/4 of our spaces in the public system are filled. And again, keep in mind, of all the spaces downtown, only 1/4 of them are under our control, and the others are private. So those would be, presumably utilized by businesses. I would venture to say at a near 100% rate during the day, probably more 8 to 5.
Darren or Matt, could you? Is that speculation in terms of whether the private ones are fully utilized or not? Have you done a study? Have you been able to work with the private business owners in downtown to figure out what is their vacancy rate? Matt, Darren?
The Walker study did that, but that was in 2007. I can tell you exactly, it's the last time I looked, 763 leased parking spots available in our system. And for the on-street parking, the study from Walker showed during peak hours, you're looking at a little bit above 40% utilization out of it. So 1,000 spots, about 115 of those, you've got handicap, you've got delivery zones, you've got bus zones. So there's roughly probably 400 or 500 spots available somewhere downtown at the meters during the day. But those are 2-hour meters or 3-hour meters. They're geared towards in and out type customers. The private lots, this one I'm not quite sure on, but that is in the study also, and you're looking at it was approximately, I believe, 64-65% on the private side, but I can get you an exact number.
I think that would be good, again, with all the dialogue in terms of our downtown commercial development efforts, our downtown economic development efforts. Like you said, Darren, one of the hottest topics is, okay, where can people park?
Yep.
For full disclosure purposes, I think it'd be good to tell the City Council as well as the people of Sioux Falls just how many are available. It looks like we've got, so about 1,000 public, let's just, 1,000 public that are available. The river ramp holds how many, 500?
Yes.
So if we tear it down, that leaves us with 500 available public spots.
Correct.
If we tear it down. If we don't tear it down, that leaves us with 1,000 today.
Yep.
And so I think the question is then how many private parking spots are available as well. And then a ramp, if you were to build a new ramp, Matt or Darren, how big would it be? Would it be 1,000? Would it be, what do you think?
Well, I think that's going to depend on the demand at the time, and I know that's not the answer that anybody wants to hear, but it is going to depend on what happens with that CNA building, what happens with how quickly Avera ramps up down there, and if they go beyond 200 because it's their IT folks going in, and they know with healthcare reform and other things, there's a real strong potential for that number to be higher. It's going to depend on a lot of factors. Frankly, a 700 space ramp would be a significant structure, and it would certainly be bigger than anything we have today. But we may find that we would need to go beyond that. One of the other things that I would mention is, first of all, we do have those exact numbers. They were done by the Walker study. As a part of the Walker study, it was my decision to take them out, so I'll take the blame for that. Matt had them in there. It was just a lot of numbers that I thought would be somewhat confusing, and they are 3 years old, but it is something we can email out. The other thing I would say is, as we're embarking on this process with the event center and the different potential locations, we are in the initial stages of studying parking availability in downtown and at the arena location, as well as traffic flow. But it's very preliminary, and our goal with that is we're working with the planning department, public works, and then public parking. We've got a somewhat large team put together, and our goal is to have all that analysis done to provide to the selected design team with that RFP by the end of this calendar year.
Thank you. And Councilor Jim, I apologize, just two more questions with your permission, please. Darren or Matt, how long does it take to if we were to tear that river ramp down?
Yep.
So how long would that take?
Well, first of all, it would, what did Walker tell us, Matt? Was it about a 3-month?
They could do it in under 3 months, and they would like to do it in the winter. We have a formal appraisal for it. It's because of the water levels and the dams. They would have to build about $750,000 to take it down. That's an estimate, high estimate, but with the economy, you might get a bit lower.
And then how long does it take to build the 700 space ramp?
Well, and keep in mind with the 3-month timeline too, that includes the permitting process. That would be everything that the professionals we contract with would do that for. And as Matt indicated, it would be approximately $650,000 to $750,000 to build a new ramp. Matt, what would you say? That'd be a year and a half.
Well, if you figured everything, we've got 3 years over the CIP for acquisition and planning and land.
Yeah.
But
Actual construction.
Actual construction, we should be able to do it in a year.
Yeah.
Very good.
Depending on the size and type.
Thank you.
And that does need to be factored in. It's not the $15,000 per space is construction cost. We still have acquisition and design if we look at something other than property that we currently own.
And right now, if you were to build, I'm sorry, that was 3 questions, Councilor Jameson. My apologies, sir. If you were to build that new ramp, what is the most prudent place to build it, where we'd get the biggest bang for our buck, the greatest value? Where would we build that 700-spot parking ramp today?
If we were pressed to give an answer, today we need to build it today, we would recommend the Skelly's lot.
Okay.
It's strategically placed. We own the property, and it really was the co-number one site. That was my take from the Walker study, the co-number one site with the Wells Fargo ramp. Obviously, the Wells Fargo ramp, great site, very strategically located, but presents challenges, again, starting with the fact we don't own it. We would have to acquire it, agree on a price, of course, demolish that, build new, and so forth, because we have no idea if that's something we could expand upon. It's doubtful.
Councilor Erpenbach.
Darren, I know I heard this wrong, but would you clarify for me, we have 4,102 spaces that are publicly owned.
Yep.
That's 1/4 of all the parking spaces in downtown?
That is what the Walker study indicated.
So there are,
12,000.
I'm terrible at math, are there 12,000 spots out there that are privately owned?
That is what the Walker study indicated.
Wow, okay. Then, Matt, would you go back to the income slide, the pie chart? We're currently making, and this is 2009, so it was in the 75 to 80% occupancy. Is that what we think with that number?
It'll be accurate to what will be this year.
So we make 1.6 million off the ramps alone,
Ramps and lots. And
ramps
service
and
lots.
lots.
I should apologize. That would be gross.
Right.
Gross, not net. We're going to anticipated revenues for the year will be about probably $450,000.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Litt.
May, you said revenues. You mean profit.
Profit.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the 1.65 would be revenue for those ramps and lots before expenses.
Right, good, thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to say that the city calls that revenue and not profit. We're a nonprofit. But that aside, Mr. Mayor, in relation to your other statement and Michelle's question, when you talk about downtown total parking, obviously there's a huge difference between daytime and nighttime. And after hours, there's a lot more parking available. Now, the 12,000 site or parking spaces that we're talking about grow. Some of them may be underground in a business. Some of them are fenced off and they're unavailable. But there are other lots that are owned by private businesses that seem amenable to the idea of public parking on them after hours. And it would be interesting to know what that number is. And if I remember from that Walker study, it was somewhere around the 9,000 at night after hours.
Yep.
I'm not certain, though. But that would be a good number to bring forward, and because it's going to enter into our discussions here as we move forward on this event center topic.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Councilor Brown.
Would you please clarify for me again what you're going to be studying in terms of the discussion of the event center downtown in regards to parking and traffic?
Yep. Well, preliminarily what we're looking at, and please keep in mind we've had one meeting, we have our next one on Friday, but what we're starting to look at first is look at a map downtown, and we're starting with looking at what was looked at in 2005 as a starting point, and that would be to use Sharapa Place. And then we'll also look at the arena site. Now, again, as you know, I mean, that could be a little bit of a moving target downtown. We don't have a downtown site identified, so we need to do that at some point to give you specific, analysis of what that footprint would look like, how it would fit in there, if there is a need for a parking ramp structure, where that would be placed. And then, of course, those rings that you can remember, I'm sure, the rings going out 1 and 2 and 3 blocks and so forth. So that's what we will do, and we'll look at all available public parking and private parking. And then, of course, we'll try to come up with some kind of formula that we feel is reasonable to share in terms of how much of that private parking may be available, and what do those lease rates look like during the day, for example, in downtown, for daytime events versus evening events when, of course, they're available to the public. So that's primarily what we'll be looking at in the parking system. And then with traffic, it'll be where are those streets, again, around those event center footprints, how do they relate to the available parking, both public and private, how the traffic can or maybe cannot flow well. Those will be the things that we'll look at and we'll present at the appropriate time, and we will provide per the RFP to the selected design team.
Okay. Matt, if you could go back to that map you had up earlier, just of the overall parking area, because I wanted to, when you look at that, you see that all our parking facilities are really virtually all west of the river, and you can see the railroad tracks in there. When the railroad tracks get relocated, there's probably opportunity for significant surface parking there, which is much more affordable, correct?
Well, it's, I guess the best answer I would probably give you today is I wouldn't be comfortable speculating and committing without doing further analysis on that. We have spent a fair amount of time in the last week or so looking at an aerial photo in that area with an event center footprint, the Sharapa place. Keep in mind, one of the railroad tracks is staying. And at Sharapa Place, again, I know just using that hypothetically, you have a surface lot there currently that has 350 spaces that the footprint would likely sit upon. So you would have to start by replacing those 350 spaces if an event center were potentially built there. So I have an opinion on that, but I think it'd be best to do further analysis and come back after we've done our due diligence and give you an idea of really what would be a possibility down there.
Councilor Brown, maybe I can answer that. I would agree that even when I gave my presentation on the event center proposal, we had found that, of course, building a surface parking ramp is definitely cheaper than building a ramp. The numbers that I think we used, even in the presentation, now that was land, again, that we own, but it was a $2.5 million investment versus a $15 million investment. So to answer your question directly, the parking ramp alone, or the parking spots alone, if you've got the available surface space or the land, it's definitely going to be much cheaper.
Okay. Question for City Clerk Deborah Owen. I don't know if we had Granicus at the time, but I would be interested if the clerk's office could research in 2005 the discussion that Kevin Smith had with the council about the surface parking available in that area and the traffic flow, if that's available to find.
Actually, those are all videoed, so we can find that for you, but I think we also have kept, it might not have been in 2005, but we can find you what you need. So
Thank you.
We'll get a transcript, or we'll find the document.
Appreciate that.
Handed out. You bet.
Any other questions for Darren? I have a slight little question or comment maybe, but I don't want this to turn into an event center conversation like it might seem to have taken, but it seems to me instead of building an additional would-be 1,000, 2,000 spots, whatever would be necessary for a new event center, but this somewhat of a private-public partnership occurring where if there was a concert or some, I keep using the Black Eyed Peas as an example because we'd sure like to have them come to town. But if they were there, I've been to these other places where I have to rent or pay $5 or $10 to park in some obscure lot that some business owns. That seems like a private partnership would be a great opportunity here because all these other 12-some thousand, maybe it dwindles down to 10,000 other parking spots are available through private businesses. If now they had an opportunity to capitalize on this, and then therefore the city doesn't have to rebuild another parking facility, I think sounds like an opportunity.
Certainly, it is something that will be looked at. We'll know what the number of public spots are. Private spots, again, you have to also understand. We'll have to decide upon how big those rings are and what is a reasonable expectation in terms of walking and what people will support, because ultimately they'll have to approve it. And as you look at that site down there, I think what you'll find, and those of us who have visited other cities and gone to these types of events, Some of that private parking space around those facilities is made available to capitalize on that opportunity, and some is not, because they don't want people coming into their lots and trash and potential for all those things. So I think that will really be something we need to look at and explore, is try to get our hands around what is that percentage that we can find in other cities for private parking that is made available versus not made available. And that'll just be one of the many factors that will go into looking at that area down there as well as at the arena.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I think we're good, Darren. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move on to our next presentation, the Tenant Education and Self-Sufficiency Program, TESS. Elda Pearson? Pearson, thank you. Person,
yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilmen. I would like to thank, first of all, the City Council for allowing me to come and share about the TESS program. I'm here at the request of Councilman Kenny Anderson, Jr., and also because I love to talk about TESS. I think it is a wonderful program that gives people a hope and a future that are feeling very hopeless. Again, my name is Elda Person. I became a person when I married my husband. And I've been at ICAP for 16 years. I'm the TESS Family Case Manager for Interlakes Community Action Partnership. And I've been with, like I said, ICAP for 16 years and the TESS program for over 2 years. TESS stands for Tenant Education Self-Sufficiency. And I will be sharing today what the TESS program is, also some statistics and even some success stories. I do have some handouts if anybody needs some. The TESS program was started in 2004. It was created for families that are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, families that cannot rent because of poor credit history, damages, or poor references from past landlords. And if you know, if you have bad credit in town, you are not able to rent. So a client must be homeless or facing eviction. It has to be a family, and they have to be working. They have to be able to afford their rent. Their rent cannot be more than 40% of their income. The reason for that is we don't want to set them up for failure. And is not able to rent because of bad credit history or previous damages to a rental. And they must fit the income guidelines of HUD for 50% for very low. The client must agree to a commitment of 1 year to the TESS program. That means that they will have weekly case management visits, and the visits will consist of budgeting, using a budget sheet, setting goals, steps to achieve the goals, and target dates when they will achieve that goal, looking for jobs, going back to school, getting child care, entering their children in early Head Start, referrals to other programs, transportation, and cleaning up their credit report, and so much more in the case management. They have to agree to having Interlakes Community Action as a representative payee for at least 6 months. They have to agree to monthly inspections of the apartment or house with ICAP caseworker and quarterly with the landlord. They have to attend 4 of the TESS classes. They're one once a month. One is financial planning. The second is a consumer credit report. Third is tenant-landlord relationships part 1, where they learn about the rights of the tenant and the rights of the landlord, how to talk to a landlord. And then the other is the tenant-landlord relationship part 2, cleaning your apartment, moving in, and leaving your apartment. And then when they complete the TESS program in 1 year, they will receive a certificate of completion signed by the ICAP rep and landlord. What's in it for the landlord? If the client defaults, for example, they fail to pay their rent, or they leave without notice, or they do not follow the ICAP rules for TESS, the landlord and the client will be notified by the family case manager, and landlord will start eviction notice immediately. So if they miss their case management meetings, they keep missing them, and they don't call in why they're missing them, or they don't go to the classes, I just let the landlord know, and they start eviction proceedings. The landlord is guaranteed the last month's rent by ICAP if the tenant defaults by not paying for their rent. This is for the client with the bad credit. There's two programs with the tests. One is for the bad credit, and the other one is a guarantee up to $2,000 damage repair if the client is on the test program for past damages. This is a safety net for the landlord to take the risk to rent to people of high risk with bad credit or damages. The ICAP family case manager agrees to meet weekly with the client, to do monthly inspections of the place with the client, to provide intense case management, provide weekly budgeting, goal setting, and to provide the payee services for 6 months or longer, to provide 4 classes year-round for clients, to open up a checking account for clients under ICAP payee and teach them about checking accounts, how to reconcile their bank statement, how to have accountability, and how to discipline when it comes to finances, to provide certificates of completion for classes and also the end-of-the-year completion for test program. ICAP also agrees to pay landlords the guarantee of last month's rent for clients who default and who do not pay their last month's rent. Also, we agree to pay up $2,000 for damage for clients under the test program for damages. The intake for a test program is the caseworker makes an appointment with the client and tells them what they need to bring in. They have to be homeless or verification, they have to have verification of homelessness or an eviction notice. Wages would be, they need to bring in their wages and any other kind of income. They have to have a statement why they are needing tests and that they are homeless or being evicted or have to move out of a place they are staying at. For example, they could be living with people and they need to move out of there. They could be living in a motel. They could be living in the Mission. They will need employer verification. Like I said, they need to be working. And income must fit the 50% guidelines. They must find a place to live where the rent is not more than 40% of their income and is safe and affordable. The reason why the 40% is because we do not want to set them up for failure. If it's any more than 40%, it's pretty hard to live on that. The client must sign the release of information, case management agreement, payee agreement, and the test contract. The case worker will go and inspect the apartment before the client moves in to make sure it is safe and to write down any defects. The case worker will sign a test agreement and have the landlord sign and give copies to the landlord and the client. And then the weekly appointments with the client will be set up. There will be a checking account that will be opened in their name under ICAP representative payee. And we will have the client do direct deposits, if possible, into the ICAP account. This program really stresses accountability and stability. It's less stress for the clients. I will have a client come in and they're so stressed out because they have these bills and they just shove them in the drawers and don't want to even look at them. And when they come here to ICAP to start the test program, their stress level is much lowered. And I really believe that working with a test client, that you must work with them and with respect and always showing dignity, no matter where they're at in life. Because it's giving them a future by setting goals and looking ahead financially, getting out of denial. So many are in denial even about their financial state. Facing life and reality, and living to better themselves. ICAP is a hand up, not a handout. We guide clients to see themselves become successful. Statistics, since inception, we have served 100 families and 359 individuals. In 2009, 41 families were served and 79 individuals. 17 were successful in completing the program, and 21 were still on the program. So they rotated then into the year 2010. To date, we have 33 families that have been served so far this year, and 71 individuals. 15 have successfully completed the program, and 15 are still on the program. 3 have been unsuccessful. A success story that I would like to share is a gal who came in because she was ready to be evicted. And she was always late on her rent. And as I started to visit with her, She had 4 payday loans out. And the way a payday loan works, if you don't know, is they keep extending it, and they keep paying on it, and the balance is never paid until it finally becomes due. And so she kept extending it. Well, I'm very happy to say she started with the test program in August, and she paid off all her payday loans by October 7th. And her stress level has lowered, and her confidence level has higher. I had another gal that came in, and she couldn't even think straight. I would say, okay, what do you owe? And she didn't know. She was in total denial. And as we worked together for a year, she cleaned up her whole credit report and has now bought her own home with the help of Dakota Dream program that ICAP has. I had another family, a grandmother a woman whose daughter was murdered in Chicago. She moved her family here, was raising her 3 grandchildren, had a daughter, another daughter, and they were living in a motel. She didn't see any hope. She got on the test program, and now she is living in a home which is rent-to-own, and she's doing great. I can go on and on about the stories, but I know time is of the essence, so... and I really believe that even those that didn't complete the program for whatever reason still benefited from the case management, learning how to budget, set goals, and to attend the classes enriched their lives and brought them to a new awareness of how to live a fuller life. I'd like to thank you for the financial support for the test program. We would not be able to assist these families to help them become self-sufficient and become productive members of society to live fuller and richer lives. Any questions?
Any questions? Councilor Anderson.
Sure. When someone comes and is accepted to your program, you stated that depending on where they were looking for housing, do you have a list of people that they can go to, or do they have to find that type of housing themselves?
Both answers are right. I do have a list. I try to guide them and help them find a place, but they have to find their own. So they have to literally go out, apply for the apartment or house or whatever, and then they do the process. And then they come back to me, and I work with the landlord. But I do have a list, and I do have a subsidized list, too. Yeah.
So basically your program is based on account management and being able to handle their finances between paychecks.
Finances is part of it. There's a lot more to it besides the finances. It's even just building them up, the confidence. And we get into all kinds of things, daycare, energy assistance, and I could go on. And transportation is a big deal. There's a lot of them that are homeless do not have transportation at all. So even to come to my meeting to meet me is very difficult. So we try to work on that also.
Well, thank you. You have a great program.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Councilor Erpenbach.
Elda,
Yes.
a few of us met you at a what was it, multi-housing group or
Yes,
something, and I just wanted to echo what Councilor Anderson said, that we're just impressed with your program, I beg innocence, I had no idea that program existed, and we're just really glad that you could report to us and bring that sort of into the public eye for us so that we can also promote it as well. So thanks for your work.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Elda, person?
Yes.
All right, anything else we need to discuss? Anybody? Seeing none, we'll take a 5-minute break before we start our fiscal committee meeting, so just shortly, 5:33 or so. Thank you. We are adjourned.